This is the story of the IDP in Probate Court. The Integrated Development Plan of Dominica, referred to by persons who are familiar with its existence and its content as the IDP, is a social and economic plan that was formulated in 2002 in Dominica through a methodology that captured the active expression of a wide range of individuals and groups across the length and breadth of the island. Most of the individuals, from farmers in villages to social activists in communities to the few civil servants who were exposed to its initial findings, have sadly probably passed away. But their collective wisdom, represented by this body of knowledge, stands as a social legacy that has enough substance to guide the future development of the peoples residing in Dominica and in other Caribbean islands. The reason why this is not known is simple. The legacy of the IDP has never been probated. Before we get too far into this discussion, let us define these two words, legacy and probate. Let us start with probate. Probate is the legal process for reviewing the assets of a deceased person and determining the inheritors. The main focus of probate is to establish the existence, authenticity, and validity of the last will and statements of the deceased. In comparison, we are bringing the IDP into probate court so as to validate the last will and statement of this document. And we all know who the inheritors of this knowledge are. Legacy, on the other hand, is the wealth that is being conveyed. In our expression, we speak of the IDP as having bequeathed to the Dominican society a social legacy. Social legacy is the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, ideas, proposals, etc. that were created in the past but still have guidance lessons for us today. Let me introduce you to Susan Bosak, strategy researcher and the founder of the Legacy Project. She speaks of legacy as, and I quote, a powerful life tool for all ages and a catalyst for social change. She gives us a striking example of how knowledge in legacy works in nature. Here is the example. Where do you think it's best to plant a young tree? In a clearing, in the old-grown forest, or in an open field? Well, ecologists tell us that a young tree grows better when it's planted in an area with older trees. The reason, it seems, is that the roots of the young tree are able to follow the pathways created by the former trees and implant themselves more deeply into the soil. Over time, the roots of many trees may actually graft themselves to one another, creating an intricate interdependent foundation hidden under the ground. In this way, stronger trees share resources with weaker ones so that the whole forest becomes healthier. Are you getting the analogy of how social legacy works? It creates the potential for an interconnection across space and time, where those who have come before us leave a steadfast path of action and responsibility to those who would follow us. To activate social legacy, you have to know and then interpret the meaning of the stories of the past. This is an approach that we use very often in practice without even pondering its importance. So the story of the IDP in Dominica stands right up there alongside the story of chattel slavery, the story of slave revolts in Grand Bay, the story of British and French colonialism in the Caribbean, the story of the Federation of the West Indies, the story of IMF famous structural adjustment processes. These are all parts of social and economic legacy that we need to fully comprehend in order to build a new and different society. So this is why today I am putting the Integrated Development Plan, the IDP, formulated in Dominica in 2002. This is why I am putting it into probate court, so that the inheritors, the next generation of development thinkers, will know exactly what it said. As we ponder why the way we now live has not changed for our benefit in the last 2 decades, we may wish to probate the IDP and see if there is still wisdom in its 3 pillars of development planning, which are A. That broadening the problem set expands potentiality to more individuals. B. That effective sharing of economic information sustains a necessary internal growth loop. And that C. In the final analysis, growing the economy is more a consequence of the quality of capacity building among our people than a result of the quantum of capital investment in our sectors. The development plan at the turn of this century has provided a roadmap to construct economic self-generating microsystems in an equitable manner to prevent a widening gap in social capabilities and access to economic opportunities and infrastructure deliveries, and incidentally, also to enable the transition to a more resilient economy. The IDP was set up to develop, support, and commercialize at the national level initiatives that would emerge from individuals and groups at the local level seeking to expand their own economic contribution within society. Let us look at some of the projects that emerged from various citizens in the wake of their understanding of the challenge as presented to them in the IDP. Almost all of these projects have remained unfunded because they probably have been beyond the vision or the petty prejudices of the political and financial decision makers over the last 2 decades. IDP pillar number 1, broadening the problem set. Because the economic activity sectors in Dominica are so small, the first objective that the IDP recognized was that we must have a self-generating loop within our project ideas as the engine that can direct additional energies into collaborative enterprises and collectively increase the gain from an initial investment. The plan itself was one big block of awareness raising, that's information sharing, and capacity building within an economically wise and literate workforce so that they can see their individual contributions to new ways of creating wealth can result in benefits to be reaped at the national level. So we find in its immediate effect, project proposals like these started to emerge. 1. A ferry service centralized in Dominica with the attendant 2 neighboring French administrations and captained by Dominicans who have years of experience sailing between the Caribbean islands. This is transportation that makes itself an easy appendage to air traffic transportation between Europe and Martinique and Guadeloupe. This is trade export that will not only diversify the origin of tourist arrivals, which until then was primarily from North America, but will also create inroads for Dominica's agricultural produce and its agro-processing delicacies. Then we had the Layu Biopark, which was actually presented to Cabinet in 2008 without a ripple of a response. This biopark was not only targeting ecotourism, it was meant to attract scientific research from international universities to come and study Dominica's ecosystems. It also had a demonstration section aimed at increasing the local ecological sensitivity to natural resource management. And it had an amphitheater and an artist sketch corner where cultural performances could benefit from tourist traffic. Then there was the Nature Island Games, which utilized the Waitukubuli Trail with strong economic connectivity throughout rural landscapes, and in this way created economic opportunities for rural communities along the trail, as well as bringing into Dominica an opportunity to raise the standards of sports performance to Olympic levels. And we may as well mention the tire recycling plant. Look at this picture and you can see where this was going. In 2015, the communities around Fonkole were being confronted with a health hazard through the accumulation and burning of used tires. Following the IDP prescription of having strong internal loop linkages, this technology in specific was designed to reduce the used tires into crumb rubber, a product that could be combined with asphalt and provide elasticity and durability in the paving of our roads and other surfaces. IDP pillar number 2, sustaining internal economic loops through information sharing. The principles as expressed in the IDP served as a guidance horizontally across diverse sectors and industries, and also vertically for various stakeholders, from policymakers to small entrepreneurs to NGO social engineers. In the IDP, information sharing was always meant to play a key role in this growth loop. Once persons become informed about the growth prospects, they can be expected to form opinions about what they themselves can do. The IDP showed us how to become ready to allow these ideas to be transformed into drivers for national economic growth. The IDP was masterful in using modern technology to move us from the generality of application to the specification of its utilities. Thus, we found arising from this appreciation such projects as a utility-scale renewable solar energy solution, building a field of solar panels on 168 acres in Kulubistri as an additional source and a cheaper way of achieving more energy sufficiencies. In fact, we saw a proposal to build a plant to manufacture such solar panels. Do you think that were these proposals in activation, that the proponents of the climate resilient housing would have been able to neglect installing solar panels on the roofs of these units? We also saw a regional freshwater trade proposal utilizing Dominica's surplus flows, Antigua's expanded port facility to import water, and Antigua's credit union intervention with assurance of minimum supplies of fresh water to over 30,000 households in that island. Are you starting to grasp the sense of the built-in economic loop linkages that the IDP stressed in using to sustain economic growth? Standard economic theory projects that the power of real economic growth is to be found in the volume of investment capital and the location of investment capital. In this approach, the impacting consequences of such investment capital are left to luck. And if you have some strings attached, you can probably improve on your chances. Not so with the IDP. The IDP is sure that the imperative for economic growth in Dominica has to operate at a level that has a wide scope for integration. It projects the potential of real economic growth into well-established loops that are constructed by broadening the problem set that will capture the focus of economic growth. This is where more actors see themselves accountable for some portion of economic growth. This is where the impacting consequences of this potential become real and very specific and not random at all. So how does the IDP summon dynamic loops of economic growth into existence? The IDP took existing conventional strategies for growth, distilled their content, and produced new guidelines in the form of overarching themes such as building private sector viability by supporting projects with strong internal self-generating growth loops, while at the same time reducing the fiscal balance. So in it, you will find in the IDPs such concepts as performance budgeting, information frames of reference supporting structural and functional sustainability, local area concept plans, the co-management of public policy, the creation of a matrix of priority action that reflects the national intent. Fundamental to building resilience in an economy like Dominica's, according to the IDP, is the different value chain connecting producers to consumers in ways that go beyond traditional transaction connections with external donors. You have to go to the IDP to find the new parameters for sharing responsibility for economic growth. These are transparency, inclusiveness, and accountability. You have to go to the IDP to find out how to promote multi-sectoral approach to economic recovery, guided by this single condition, which is this, that the recovery investment proposition must be judged by its ability to contribute to a cluster of associated activities, whose end objective is to collectively, when you add them all up, to collectively lower the per unit operational cost in each new venture. This is where you understand how multi-enterprise zones and IDP concept can be used to build on cluster expansion in the supply chain. This is where you understand how to strengthen the internal loop linkages, thereby promoting incipient development of people. That is, igniting a chain of development activities at the local level. This is where you will understand how the social contracts and the economic contracts proposed by the IDP to govern the relationship between government and the rest of society, that is, private sector and civil society. This is where you understand how these are designed to redefine the conditionality of government's intentions as against the conditionalities they are forced to accept from international lenders. It gives them cover under which to bargain such international conditionalities. There is one underlying principle within the IDP, and it is this: that market activity stamped with the culture of the people who build it will always have a more lasting impact on the original source than on the intended destination. The IDP Companion Guide. An integrated development plan is by definition a very comprehensive document. The IDP final report comprised 4 volumes with some 350 pages of text. And within this text, there were 7 chapters and 7 annexes. Fortunately for us, the Integrated Development Plan of Dominica was compiled in digital format so that future generations can access it. For instance, this index, as you're looking here, of the IDP, is one of 7 digital platforms. This one has over 220 named items and concepts. So you can choose, for instance, an item such as sensitization meetings and get the summary of the sensitization meetings held by the IDP. And if you're more interested, you can click on the topic Read Document and obtain a 2-page document that describes the results of these meetings. While back in 2002, such a voluminous document would have posed a navigational challenge for the reader and/or the researcher, today, the electronic companion guide of the IDP is designed to help the reader and researcher to find relevant material with ease. When we make the comparisons, the IDP makes the conventional programmed response called development planning appear to be naive, unrealistic, and without relevance to the economic desires and wishes of most of the citizens. At this Requiem for the IDP, we continue to express one truth the IDP believed was essential to the development process, and that is to share the information discovered within the IDP. Hopefully, this electronic IDP companion guide can be made available through such institutions like the Public Library, the National Archives, or even local platforms like TDN, so that all present and future development thinkers in Dominica can better equip themselves to formulate viable solutions for the future. Thank you very much.